Today we're going to dive deep into the death metal genre. I got Mr. Michael from Vacuous here. Michael, how's it going today?
Good, thanks.
Where in the world are you? Are you over in England?
Based in London, UK today.
Wonderful, wonderful. What's the weather like over there?
Well, it's nighttime right now. But yeah, it's been a classic gray kind of not like pouring rain, but like that misty rain that will get you like nice and wet without you being able to do anything about it. Like no umbrella,
Sure.
it's kind of horizontal rain, if you know what I mean.
I got you. I'm out just outside of Philadelphia here in the U.S. and it's East Coast, so it's been chilly. So,
Yeah, yeah,
it is what it is. But getting to talk about some death metal today should warm us up, so that's a good thing.
yeah.
All right, man. So Vacuous has this album coming out. First one that's debuting on Relapse comes out February 28th, In His Blood. You guys had Dreams of Dystopia or Dysphoria out on in 2022. A ton of diversity on this record. Was that kind of intentional to give the listener a variety of different death metal stuff to listen to?
Yeah, I think we kind of wanted to just experiment a little and just bring in different influences. Just the previous record, I think, fits really nicely in that kind of cavernous death doom genre. And I think we knew we wanted to move away from that in a sense. We didn't want to pigeonhole ourselves. And there are lots of things we wanted to experiment with. Like we were looking at like trying to keep that dark and just really depressing atmosphere, but pulling from stuff like goth and post-punk and seeing if we could kind of make that fit the molds of Vacuous and kind of filter it through the lens of death metal. And yeah, so that's why I think there are a lot of different stylistic ideas on the record, but we worked hard to make it not seem that just like not like a collage, and hopefully it comes across as a cohesive album.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's a good listen too, because you're not pigeonholed into the same tone and beats. You get a little variety. It's definitely this vile modern death metal, but some songs are like just pure brutal old school. It's I dig it a lot, man.
Yeah.
The talk about getting signed to Relapse. Nowadays, what does it take to get noticed and signed to such a freaking label like Relapse, man?
I mean, to be honest with you, like Relapse, I don't think they were really on our radar of like labels to pitch to or to aspire to working with just because, they're so legendary and like I'm not really aware of them having such a presence working with UK bands as well. So it just didn't cross our mind. Um, but what happened with Relapse is just being the right place at the right time, essentially. We're good friends with a guy called Charlie who runs a record shop in London called Crypto the Wizard.
Yep.
Um, don't know if you've heard of them, but anyway, right below his shop is a studio called Holy Mountain, which is where we happened to record the album, basically in the basement of the record shop. And I guess he was in touch with Relapse just for ordering, wholesale stock for his shop. And one of the reps from the label was on a business trip to London and stopped by the shop and was chatting to him and saying, do you know of any good UK bands that are worth being aware of? And he's like, well, as a matter of fact, there's this death metal band that's just recorded an album downstairs. They're mixing it now. And I know that they're going to be looking for a label. So, and yeah, basically, they said, oh, yeah, put us in touch. And yeah, we sent them a rough mix of the album and they were interested. And yeah, that's how it happened. I don't think we would have gotten our foot in the door otherwise if it wasn't for just that kind of, our friend Charlie vouching for us. And it's like, yeah, yeah, I feel, I'm really happy that they took note of us and everything, but it's a lot of it comes down to like being at the right place at the right time.
Sometimes it comes down to timing too, man. Sure.
Yeah.
But I'm new to the band, and like I mentioned earlier, you did have a release a couple years ago. Um, did I'm assuming that they had to do some research and see if you had what kind of social media presence you have, or shows that you've played before, or how previous releases do, or was this just they liked what they heard and they wanted to just get behind it?
Yeah, that I mean, there was I don't think there was a lot of vetting in terms of like, we need to sell this many records. I
Yeah,
think yeah, they probably had a look and saw that we had a previous record, it did okay. It was on Dark Descent and Misako no Ho, which are both like very well respected underground death metal labels. It didn't. I don't think it like blew up or anything, but it did reasonably well the first album. So it's like we weren't completely unknown or new. I would in the death metal scene. So they weren't starting from scratch. But yeah, I think, I mean, I like to think they thought it was a good fit because I think it's a good fit for us in terms of, you know, aesthetically and artistically. Like Relapse has been like, yeah, they've got like, these old school classics like Obituary, Incantation and stuff, but
sure.
they've always had that kind of, they've always had bands that try to do things a little bit differently, and maybe they saw that in us, which
Okay.
I'm hoping is the case.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just kind of curious because I'm not in the band. I would love to be on stage one day, just jamming out and play some guitar. But
Yeah.
you just like what got you to that point? As like so again, the music clearly, or they want to sign you, but being in the right place at the right time. I mean, I always wondered, is it, and I'm sure that you've paid dues with playing smaller gigs and trying to keep pushing along and whatever, maybe member changes. I mean, who knows? But I'm just kind of curious, is it, is like nowadays in 2020, 25, do you have to have a big social media, or is it, like, how does that all go? But, again,
Yeah, I think it's a bit of all of those things. Like, I think every band's journey is going to be different in some way, and there's no formula. I think, going back to being at the right place at the right time, we're fortunate to have been a band in a big city like London where there are tons of opportunities, and I hate to use the word networking, but like it's easy to make the right connections that can open doors to you. Whereas I talk to, when we go on tour in the UK and we play more regional cities and we're talking to bands that we play with, and it's kind of like, it's just apparent to me that they don't have the same opportunities as a band that's based in London.
makes sense. Yep.
So yeah, but that's not to say like, we've obviously worked really hard and we're super glad that it's paid off, but
Music has to, like I
it's,
said, the music's got to be good. So, if it's
yeah,
music, they're not going to say, "Oh, well, you're here. Let's beside you anyway." It's got to be good music. The title track and had a video released to it also, in his blood. Such a sick tune, man. I mean, Max is brutal on the drum kit, man. He just brings it.
yeah. This time around, we recorded without a click track, which we had used on the previous album. So
Interesting.
Max is just gonna push the tempo to, as fast as he can go. And so we figured, we were happy with the way the first album sounded, but part of us was like, it's a bit restrained and it's not exactly how we sound when we play live. And I think like, losing the click track and getting a bit loosey goosey with the tempo is kind of brought out this different energy that I think we managed to capture on this one. And yeah, part of it is Max just going as fast and hitting as hard as he can.
He's so good, man. And talk about your singer, because obviously in this tune he starts off with that Slayer-esque type scream, and but his tone is so unique to my ear. It just unlike anything I've ever heard. It really makes it stand out.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I think he's got a really unique pitch that kind of covers a lot of ground. He can go from the, super low death metal stuff to the kind of soaring, more black metal high stuff, kind of really seamlessly. Um, And I think he put in a lot of work on this record, to work on making his performance like really catchy and kind of hook driven, which is something that's new for us because previously I think the vocals were used more as kind of like an extra texture, because our first album was a bit more free form, but this on In His Blood we kind of were like, all right, let's try to be like very, bold and direct, and so that meant bringing in like, you know more traditional, I guess, song structures, verse, a chorus, and a very deliberate hook. And I think he worked really hard to get on board with that and to make his vocal performance as kind of as tight and as catchy as he could.
Yeah, I mean it just stands out, and uh, what makes me angry sometimes is that people who just hear, the death metal vocals, a lot of people, especially older people, just blow it off like it's just screaming, man. But you could blow your pipes out so easy if you don't know what you're doing, and if you don't know how to control your voice, it could be, pitchy and screechy, and Joe just nails it, man. I love his performance on this video or on this album.
Yeah, and I think, going back to how what you're saying about people just writing off death metal vocals, a lot of people say like, oh, it's just this kind of like monotonous, grunt. There's no emotion behind it. But I'm like, you know, listening to Joe like that, I feel like he's a very emotional death metal vocalist, and he's able to convey that really well. So yeah, yeah, I think what he's been able to achieve with this album just matches what we're doing musically perfectly.
100%, man, 100%. I know today, I think Stress Positions was just released as a single.
Yeah.
And, the cool thing about this one, Michael, is that the guitars, it just attacks right from the jump. That's something that really stood out for me. It's a guitar driven tune. It seems like to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's I would say the most physically challenging one to
Okay.
play on the album, and it was to record. Yeah, it was that one's very, it's very Slayer influenced, but goes from a very frantic Slayer all over the place to then like slowing right down to kind of that Paradise Losty Death Doom thing, which I also wanted to bring onto this album.
Cool. Um, the song Contraband, I have in my notes that to me it's hard to put into words because it's got such a vicious, deathcore vocal, but the guitars and even the drums are kind of more even paced like old school obituary kind of, it's cool
Yeah,
shit. I really dug it. It stood out. It was one of the standout songs for me.
yeah. Well, that was kind of inspired by I guess like post-punk or goth type music.
Okay.
We really wanted that one to be very bass driven and kind of stick with a 4/4, just kind of very simple beat, and have a lot of dynamics between the verses and the chorus, kind of have it go quiet and then loud again for the choruses. And it took a lot of work to not make it kind of really clumsy song, which I think it easily could have been. And so yeah, when we sent the demo of that one to our producer Stan Gravett, and yeah, I think he was like, you know, calm down. We need to like hash this one out before you we hit record. And so we spent a lot of time making it seem like, something that could still work within the context of a death metal band. So yeah,
I,
but I'm happy with how it came out, and we've played it live once, and everyone was like, "What was that?" So hopefully, that's a good sign.
I tell you, I listened to that one with my JBL earbuds on, and the song almost gave me vertigo, man. I mean, it's just it's just crazy. Very cool tune.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was neat. The song lyrically is, from what I understand, is about 39 Vietnamese migrants who were suffocated in a lorry accident, trying to come over to England. From what I read from what Joe had.
Yeah. Well, the whole sort of theme of the album um, is about our relationship with, you know, violent content imagery and sort of how we consume it through whether it's social media, any kind of internet form. And I think Joe's angle with this song is just kind of how it was this horrific thing, these migrants trying to come over to the UK, and that were just treated in such an inhumane way that they were just left to suffocate and die in a truck. Um, it was on the news one day and then it was gone, and it just felt like the whole thing has just been like trivialized in a sense. And so that's kind of the general theme of the album, is like how desensitized we are to like these things that are horrific and should make you feel something, but it's just because we're consuming them in such a casual way, just
Sure.
because it's, I'll pick up my phone and scroll through and see the news story, then put it back down and go about my daily life. So yeah, that I think hopefully I've done justice in explaining what the sort of this thought process was from Joe's side, but that's
100%.
the overall
I
gist of it.
I read his quote that said it was such a tragedy, but in the blink of an eye, you missed it. It was on the news one day, gone the next day, and yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
that's sad for something like that. On the other hand, the tune "Public Humiliation." I chose this one to discuss because the opening is just brilliant. I mean, I love a song that can evoke like an atmosphere and a mood just by its tone, and
Mm,
I think that's how it is that how this one starts out. You know,
yeah. Well, that one again, it's like with Contraband, there was a lot of work. The song itself was written fairly early on, but it was like the arrangement and the tone, getting that right. Because it's a lot of it, the texture of a song, like whatever what the guitar pedal effects that you use, it's like that's the whole sonic experience on something that's so sparse in terms of like there's not a lot of notes being played. Um, but yeah, I'm happy with that one. I think it covers a lot of grounds, and I think yeah, it's got kind of all the different facets that are on the album condensed into one track, pretty much.
who's got the guitar solo in that one?
That's me. Yeah,
Bravo, dude.
thank you. That's
So cool, man.
heavily
It,
inspired by
it's like
Greg.
simple, but
Greg.
it's so forceful, man. It's oh man, it's awesome.
That's heavily inspired by Greg McIntosh from Paradise Lost. It's just I'm not. There's not a lot of room for like shredding in this band, and traditional guitar solos, in the sense that we don't have set aside a part of the song to be like, all right, me or Ezra like let loose and do a little shred. It's like it has to have a songwriting, it has to be of some value to the song, so it has to bring a melody. Or see, I'm a big fan of so leads. I think I'd call them a guitar lead rather than a solo.
Sure, sure.
Um, yeah, just in a sense, because it's not like, oh, look at me, look how well I can play. It's more like this is the melody that ties in with the theme of the song.
It's brilliant. What does the band have in store for possible touring once the record comes out?
So in terms of shows, we've got a release show the day after the album comes out. That's in London at a festival called Life After Death, which is kind of this weird and quirky event that's put together by Charlie from Crypto the Wizard, which is the record shop I was telling you about earlier. Um, After that, in April, we've got I think it's a 9 date UK tour, headlining tour.
Oh, nice.
With there's a band from France that's supporting us called Cavalry, and they're kind of like black metal, punky kind of black metal mix. So that'll
Cavalry.
be
Okay.
cool. And then we've got some European festivals like in September and October dotted around the place. But yeah, beyond that, we'll see. I think we're just waiting for the album to come out and see what people where people want us to play and what offers we get. But yeah, we'll do what we're able to do. We all have day jobs and other commitments, but we'll try to do as much as we physically can.
Well, the people can grab it on February 28th. It's out on Relapse Records, In His Blood. Michael, it's been a pleasure, man. Enjoy your rest of your afternoon and your weekend, and wish you success with the album.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Take
All right,
care.
Michael. We'll see you. Bye bye.
Bye.